We're the All People's Health Collective, where organizers, advocates, and everyday people come together to demand care, housing, and freedom for all. APHC is fighting for care without control, housing without conditions, and dignity for every person.
Awesome. Welcome to the All People's Health Collective podcast. Today I'm joined by Gretchen Bergman. Gretchen is an advocate and lead organizer of the Moms United to End the War on Drugs campaign. And Gretchen's going to be talking with us today about the ongoing war on drugs, her path to her work, and organizing families against the stigmatization and criminalization of people who use substances. So Gretchen, thank you so much for coming on today, and I'm really excited to dive into this conversation with you. So just to get us started, could you share a little more about yourself and your path to the work that you're currently doing?
Sure, and that was a great introduction. Thank you. You really capsulized all that Moms United is. Um, I'm Gretchen Burns Bergman, and I'm actually co-founder and executive director of A New Path, Parents for Addiction Treatment and Healing. That's the organization that started way back in 1999, working to reduce the stigma associated with substance use and substance use disorders, and advocating for therapeutic rather than punitive drug policies. In 2009, we started the Moms United and the War on Drugs campaign because we were growing so fast. And rather than doing chapters, we came up with the plan to create a collaborative campaign whereby people who are already doing this work, we could lift up the work that they're doing. And for people that didn't have a place to do advocacy, they could join us and in maybe more rural areas of the United States. So we have a steering committee that represents several states, and we have 38 states represented now, and six country partners: UK, Canada, Mexico, and so. Yes, to reduce the stigma and to stop the criminalization of people who use drugs. And I should tell you why I got started. Because I'm a mom, and both of my sons had struggled for decades with addiction to heroin. My older son was incarcerated at the time that I started A New Path for marijuana possession. In California, that wouldn't be a crime at this point. So I knew at that time that society, our criminal justice system, was mishandling and misunderstanding substance use disorders. And so that's how we started. Um, Oddly, when we talk about the war on drugs, my older son was born in 1971, the same year that President Nixon declared the war on drugs. And little did I know at that time that it would be affecting families like mine so severely and sometimes tragically for so long. Um, we have seen a lot of improvements over the years in stigma reduction and in embracing of harm reduction strategies, but we're currently at a time where we're going backwards. There's a big ramping up of the war on drugs. And I think we're gonna lose a lot of lives. Our incarceration numbers are already going back up again. And it's just really a backward trend that's really disillusioning for me, having worked this hard for so many years, to see the backslide and to kind of feel like we have to push the boulder back up the hill again. Right?
Yeah, definitely. And thank you for sharing some of your story as well. Um, I hadn't realized that A New Path had been around for so many decades, and I'm really curious to hear more about how you've seen the war on drugs kind of evolving and what the frontiers of this like ongoing fight are now. Um, and then sort of separately, and maybe this is a question just for later, but I'm wondering if you can talk more about what it's been like to organize families specifically against the war on drugs and what you think about the role of family in this fight.
Yeah. When I spoke out, I spoke out because I'm very stubborn and I just saw that it was wrong and I realized when I realized that my son had a drug problem, right? I I really love my son. And I didn't know yet that the second son was going to struggle with the same disorder, but so I was just committed to learning as much as I could. And I think we parents were getting a lot of bad advice. They were pushing a tough love kind of mentality and saying if you were helping, you were codependent, and it just didn't ring true. That whole idea of waiting till they hit bottom when I was watching a burgeoning addictive illness that I realized my son's bottom would be death or incarceration, obviously. Yeah. So when I started speaking out, it was almost like I had allowed so many parents who were dealing with shame, feeling blamed for their children's drug problems. And certainly if they got involved in legal things, that was a shameful thing. So it really seemed to open up the door for more parent advocacy. People saying, I don't want to be a victim. I don't want to be blamed. I love my children. I'm advocating in their best interest, just like I would if they had muscular dystrophy or diabetes or anything else. I'm advocating for their best chance in the world and to get out of this maze. And so over the years, we've seen a lot of policy change. I started in 2000, right off the bat. I was the state chair for Proposition 36 in California, which mandated treatment instead of incarceration. And that really started a lot of drug policy reform across the nation. Things tend to start in California and then move through the states. Um, at this point, I don't believe in mandated treatment, but it opened the door, right? And I think the more that I learned about this, the more I got deeply involved in all strategies that reduce the harm and rejecting the tough love because that was not based on fact or science, and we were losing people, and families were tragically suffering. And I know mothers who wished they weren't in the process of tough love when their child died because they didn't get to embrace him till the end and let their child know that they love them. And so a lot of that has evolved. We've seen more, when we first started talking about harm reduction, people would say, oh, you're just trying to enable drug use, right? And you'd have to say, no, people can't recover if they're dead. We have to meet them where they are and gently bring them along. And I would say harm reduction for me is also, as an advocate, taking the person who's lost in that kind of thinking that, we must punish this person, taking them where they are and gently bringing them into the light, because the more knowledge you gain, the more tools you have to make positive change, right? Um, so, over the decades, it's been a slow process. It's not a popular cause. Funding for advocacy work was difficult, is always difficult. But but in embracing other partners that are doing this work through Moms United, we may not all agree on every item about legalization versus decriminalization, et cetera, but we have really been moving forward until the last 6 years, something like that. I'd say about the time of the first Trump administration, and now the fight is on to preserve the gains that we've made. For example, with overdose, it went down, and it was largely understood that the numbers went down because of widespread naloxone, big campaigns to destigmatize medication-assisted treatment, such as methadone and buprenorphine, and it's widely understood that that was the reason for the numbers coming down. But now we're going back to the same kind of drug war rhetoric. And if we go back to just punishment and incarceration, we're going to lose lives. It's important to note that although the numbers went down overall in Black and Brown communities, they continue to rise. So we still don't have well, we don't have treatment on demand, which is a long time goal of mine, but we also don't have equitable treatment and recovery resources. So, the whole trajectory of what 26 years has been it's been amazing. We've been one of another uh, roadblocks that we came up with was trying to reach out to youth leadership within harm reduction. And they said, why are you trying to teach kids about drugs? And we'd have to say, kids already know about drugs. They've seen their friends die in the bathroom, overdose in the bathroom. So we need to, um, uh, listen to them, not talk at them. And that I would say took about 5 years to get naloxone into the schools and to be able to be direct, speak directly with youth and build leadership in that area.
Yeah, that's really amazing to hear about some of the intergenerational kind of work and that sort of framework. And a lot of what you said about listening to youth resonates a lot with me. Um, I guess now that like I'm just thinking about the present moment as we're in this moment, like you said, where the war on drugs is continuing and evolving and ramping back up. At the same time that we have all of these other systems of punishment that are also evolving and being expanded, whether that's through the criminal punishment system in general, these attempts to roll back bail reforms, obviously ICE detention and the, immigration system, which I know also overlaps a lot with the war on drugs, of course. And the psychiatric system that in California, especially APHC, has done a lot of work, thinking about and doing education on how that is also becoming more carceral and more punitive and more coercive. So I'm just, yeah, curious if you have thoughts on how your work overlaps with all of these other systems or how you think about these systems intersecting, with the issues that you work on.
It definitely intersects. And, when President Nixon declared the war on drugs, it was really declaring a war on Black people and also on anti-war protesters at the time, which I was one of those protesting the Vietnam War. But we know that all of these things intersect. In fact, we have a Mom's Resolution campaign basically saying that it's not just about drug policy. We have to look at this is a war on immigrants. It's a war on women. It's a war on LGBTQ. And for a long time, we were more narrowly just about drug policy, harm reduction strategy. But now it's sort of like we need to all watch out for one another because we're all related in this war. It is a war not just on Black people and brown people and people who use drugs, et cetera. It's a war on all of us. It's a war on families, and so we need to be really cognizant and continue to develop our stronger partnerships with like-minded organizations.
Absolutely. Yeah. To that end, can you share a little more about the campaigns that you're currently working on and some of those efforts also that you might be making to de-silo drug policy from other issues?
Yeah, we're currently in our 13th year of our Empty Chair at the Holiday Table campaign. It is an awareness campaign. A lot of them are purely social media, although that one developed into more, which I'll tell you about in a second. But we collect pictures of loved ones on a chair, signifying the empty chair at people's holiday tables, which is it can be such a joyful time, but also a really painful time for families who have a loved one missing. I mean, for years I had a loved one missing because he was incarcerated. My other son was missing because of stigma, even within my own family. that we had to break that down. So people send in a picture of their loved one with a statement. It's either overdose, stigma, drug war violence, um, incarceration. And so we collected an album of all those things, and we pushed that message out each year from Thanksgiving through the end of the holidays, all of the holidays. Um, and that became a really good awareness campaign because it allows you to talk, allows families to see it in a visceral way. What this sort of mixed feelings of the holidays, because when a loved one's missing, there's just pain and trauma there. Um, we also took that campaign and did it with our partners in Tijuana. San Diego's a border town. So in Tijuana, there's Previn Casa, which they provide syringe exchange, naloxone distribution, several services. And we're trying to do a Mothers Across Borders kind of collaboration that we've been working on for a while. So we had an artist build two large chairs, 8 by 4 chairs. And we put one on this side of the border and one on the other side of the border, really to show that that the war on drugs is not just in the United States. It's a global war on drugs, and mothers are mourning on both sides. Families are being destroyed, and particularly because San Diego is a border town, we have families where the members cross the border for work. We unfortunately have people in San Diego who go down to Tijuana and overdose in hotels, and it's in Tijuana, and so it's a shared problem, a shared tragedy, and we created that campaign to really viscerally show that. And those are the current campaigns, but our newest campaign is Heart Not Harm, and it's to demonstrate that it's really to talk back against the drug-induced homicide laws that we're seeing cropping up all over because of fentanyl. Fentanyl has been so highly politicized. Witness what Trump just declared fentanyl a weapon of mass destruction, right? Um, and because basically fentanyl is in our drug supply. I mean, there's in San Diego, the heroin is not even present any longer. It's been replaced by fentanyl. Um, so uh, so fentanyl has become demonized, and the criminal justice system has gotten a hold of this and is talking, the DEA in particular, talking to mothers who have freshly lost their children due to an overdose, saying, your child was a good child, not a street addict like my child. um, so there's this othering and further stigmatizing going on. He was poisoned. Um, and that tends to mean that somebody did something deliberately to kill them. So hence, your child was murdered. And getting parents to sign on to this kind of form of retribution and punishment for the drug dealer, when we know that the drug dealing relationship is really friends using with friends. I mean, and I state that um, my two sons both were addicted to heroin, right? On any given day, one then could have been considered the dealer and the other user. If one of them died that day, the other one could be arrested and serve life imprisonment for murder. And so it's gotten so extreme. Yes, there are drug dealers that make money, but predominantly this is being affected. The girlfriend of the guy that died is now being held accountable for murder. Um, so anyway, the Heart Not Harm campaign is trying to viscerally say, and we did a large art installation in Detroit at the Drug Policy Alliance Reform Conference. That here's society's choices. This is what we're currently doing. We're incarcerating people with mental health and addiction issues. They're dying. We had the trail of we actually had a walk-in solitary cell where people could feel what that feels like. It was very hard for me to go in there, by the way. And then we have Trail of Truth partners that do tombstones, and so there's tombstone makings. So identifying that death, is one option that society is giving us, incarceration is the other, but there's another way, and that way is through compassion, tolerance, um, education, debunking stigma, and really helping people, because what people need to find their way to recovery is compassion. So we had a circle of moms healing hugs. We had uh, t-shirts that said that, and we had art projects, all kinds of healing things, a collection of mom stories, etc. Well, we're going to keep that one going because there's still such a push for not just drug-induced homicide laws, but all kinds of really punitive laws that where so many families are going to be suffering now. So we've just launched that campaign in November, but this year will be dedicated to a lot of this and trying to get parents gently to be saying retribution or revenge don't ease the pain. Compassion, tolerance, restorative justice does, and trying to enlist more mothers, fathers, family members to speak out. Yeah, so those are two. If you can keep listening, I've got another one that's called Mom's Resolutions that we do in January. Um, and that started with the first Trump presidency as well, where this is sort of about what we were talking earlier about the intersectionality of all this, that it's a war not just on drugs, but on Black and brown people. It's a war on LGBTQ. It's a war on women. It's a war on immigrants. And that we cannot silently sit by when our brothers and sisters are being taken.
Yeah, that I could listen to you talk way more about that. But I'm a phrase that you used that really resonated with me was the war on families. And in my work at Civil Rights Corps, I'm an investigator. Most of our work is on the criminal punishment system and the family policing system, or
Oh
what
yeah,
is more commonly known as CPS, the child welfare system. But we do a lot of thinking about how these systems are all just about separating families in so many different forms and using different mechanisms. But I think it's also really interesting, like that, what you said at the end, fighting for our brothers and sisters, that like family isn't just nuclear family, it sounds like in the way that you're talking about it. Like, and I think that's really important to keep in mind at this moment where family is also being invoked all the time and on the conservative right, but like a very specific idealized kind of family. And that idealized family, like you sort of talked about, is also then like used to scapegoat families that fall short of that ideal, or to say like addiction is, because of bad parenting or because of this private family's failure, instead of
right.
actually looking at the structural issues and the state failures that lead to these problems. And so I'm just thinking about like what you're saying is, to me, it sort of lands as like fighting for family, is also fighting against this like very narrow kind of idealized nuclear family ideal, and thinking about mothering and family as a radical act and a political act and like a way of building power across even borders, like you said.
Right. It was interesting in our Moms United meeting yesterday. We were talking to a representative from Nigeria and talking about how they're really fighting the pregnancy if a woman has a trace of a drug and having a pregnant woman be arrested, and it's happening here too. So we're talking about can we develop campaigns that are more global in regard to this issue? Because a pregnant woman, even if she's on medicated assisted treatment, it can be have her child taken away, and that creates so much generational trauma, right? And so we have so much work to do. And I get to this stage in my life. Both of my sons are in long-term recovery. They're both work as drug and alcohol counselors. They're both invested in harm reduction. One does most of our naloxone, larger trainings at schools and stuff like that. Um, but I think we're all committed to continuing this work because it's so necessary for the future. It's people said, "Oh, now that your sons are in long-term recovery, why are you still doing this work?" And I think because I want to take pain on my family's story and translate it into purpose. And we're not done yet, and we're far from done. And this problem will go on beyond my life. And so a lot of this work is developing the leadership underneath that will continue this very necessary battle um, for human rights and dignity, you know.
Yeah, kind of going back to the intergenerational nature of the work that you were talking
Mm.
about earlier. Um, I'm wondering if you can talk more about the kinds of, and you touched on this in a lot of different points, but just maybe to bring together like what kinds of services or supports or resources do you think that families actually need to, heal and support their loved ones and be well?
We offer, when we first started, it was all about advocacy. And in 2014, I testified for the bill in California that, as you know, that allows organizations like ours to distribute naloxone. And since that time, we've had in San Diego County a building and still building, growing um, distribution of naloxone and now fentanyl and xylazine test strips as well. Since we started, we trained 37,000 people, and I think the latest number of reports of overdose reversals was 3,489. And that's just when people come back and say, I used the naloxone to save my daughter's life, or I used it, and I need another kit. So we know it's a lot broader than that. Um, this next year, we're going to be adding syringe exchange to that. And that's just an example of San Diego. So some of the things we're doing in San Diego, then we can help somebody in Florida, because like for Florida, for years didn't even have syringe exchange. So we kind of learned from one another how about drug policy and maybe ideas of how to promote better policy in your states and things like that. And then we have people who have been doing in New York who have been doing this kind of work for years, harm reduction work. So also, we started more direct service in that we offer SMART recovery meetings. We offer MARA meetings, medication assisted recovery anonymous meetings weekly. We offer grief support. We had our grief support meeting last night, and that's for family members. Actually, we broadened it. It's not, you don't have to have lost a child or lost a loved one. If you're in the throes of worrying about it every day, you wake up in the middle of the night wondering if your child is in the gutter somewhere. And I say child because my kids are my kids forever, right? And they're in their early 50s now. So, but still, and what's the saying? The mother's only as happy as her least happy child. But you're a mother for life. So we also offer support groups for co-occurring disorders, parents who are struggling with that. So we also have a place called Path to Life, where we offer not just harm reduction. People can drop by and get supplies or trainings and things like that, but they can also get recovery support services. So there's computer, peer counselor there on site. So to just to help recovery, I believe recovery support services are so important because finding your way to recovery is not a one and done thing. You still oftentimes, because particularly if there's criminal justice involvement, I mean, you've got a record, so it's hard to get a job. You have no money coming directly out of prison, and if your family's rejecting you and communities, how do you do it? So helping them to find a job, find services for other health issues, et cetera, is really important. So we offer that as well. And then our partners across the United States, everybody's a little bit different. Some are more organized for harm reduction. Some are better off with child protective services kinds of ends of things. In Michigan, they're doing that. Um, our purely advocacy part has expanded. But back to Moms United on the advocacy, we have six campaigns per year. One is Ask Mom How to Save a Life, which is the naloxone distribution, um, and that people can get involved in or not, depending on their time frame. But we offer the tools of some way for them to use it in their own areas, or if it's not helpful, they don't need to be involved. It's very kind of a loose relationship that way. But the idea is to provide an umbrella, or maybe upside down umbrella, to uplift the work of everybody, so our voices are stronger in the advocacy field when we're dealing with this massive return and things like the unfortunate murders of Rob Reiner and his wife, and the son being blamed and now demonized, and and just bringing up that there are so many families that worry about this stuff daily. In fact, I was really taken because I heard that Nick Reiner had been in 18 treatment facilities. My son had been in 19 before he found recovery. And so there you can kind of feel the ups and downs of being a loving parent, trying again and again and again to get the services that are needed. And it's more complicated when there's a dual diagnosis, of course. And so this is not a simple issue. And there's nobody that should be demonized in this situation. We just need better understanding. We need a better system of care. We need more recovery support services, and just it sends us backwards to just make this a simple case of bad or good, and punishment or so. One of our moms was in the New York Times yesterday, quoted, talking about her journey. So, you know, we so besides the regular campaigns we have, we also try to speak out when there's an opportunity to change the framework of the dialogue.
Yeah. And yeah, that education piece that you talk about, I think is so important. And I know we're sort of nearing the end of our 45 minutes, but maybe just to close things off, what do you want people to keep in mind as we're kind of in this period of, you know, ramping up the drug war, expanding carceral systems in the midst of this news cycle where addiction is in the news a lot. What are the things that you want people, especially folks who might not have a loved one who struggled with addiction or might not have, personal experience, sort of be thinking about in this time? And finally, how can people get involved and connect with you if they want to?
I think our world is so filled with misinformation now, and sometimes it's purposely misinformation. And for people to, we fear what we don't understand, and we hate what we fear. To take a step back, and rather than finding a scapegoat, which is the common thing that we're seeing, right? There's somebody, I feel pain, therefore somebody else has to be held responsible. Instead of that, what I'm telling people is to continue to lead with love. Take a step back, and try to understand the larger picture, and then again gently lead with love. Um, it's difficult sometimes when you have somebody who has experienced a lot of trauma, like losing a child, to argue with them about their grief, and that's not what we want to do. but instead we want to share that it's pointless and it won't solve your grief issue in any way or reduce the trauma. But by educating yourself, gently educating others, and remaining true to the concepts of compassion, tolerance, um, then we can really lead with love. Um, it's difficult when we're every day we're hit with bombarded with new trauma, right? But continue to do that and reach out to other people. There's so much um, healing in community, right? So we would love for people to reach out to us and you get involved in any level that you want to. If you just need somebody to talk to, we have people on our boards who are licensed clinical social workers. We can direct you to grief support or some of the other support systems. Um, and more important than that, I truly believe in making lemonade out of lemons, right? And I think that's part of what keeps me at this, especially because my sons also so much embrace it. It's become a family advocacy thing, family and friends advocacy. So join us. The website is anewpath.org or momsunited.net. Again, A New Path is the organization. Moms United is the campaign, collaborative campaign. And so join us in any capacity that you would like. And we welcome, and just, I think it's important not to sit alone in anger or fear, but to reach out.
Thank you so much, Gretchen. It's just been really powerful to hear you share about your work and your story and your sort of experience, harnessing your personal grief and turning it into a force for political transformation and organizing other families as well towards healing and being together. So this has been really wonderful. And yeah, just really appreciate you coming on and chatting with us today.
Well, it was a lovely interview. Thank you so much. And I appreciate any chance to kind of push this message. It's really needed, and we're not going to get where we want to go unless we're all working together. And so thank you for this opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. Is there anything else you want to share with listeners before we close out?
No, I think happy holidays. I hope there's not a lot of sadness in your journeys. If there is, just wrap yourself in a big hug and know that you're not alone. And we'll get this through this together. Thank you.